Pastor Culley, you come from a very unique background in terms of your mission today, which you can see that there's a course when it comes to the Jews and the Gentiles as it relates to Israel and this unity, this vision of unity that you have.
Yes.
You've done a lot of globe trotting, so we'd like to hear some of that testimony, beginning with boot camp.
I was in high school playing in a rock band, and the other guys that I was in the band with ended up doing drugs. The cops found out about it. They got busted. I was not doing the drugs. I would have if I had known about it. It wasn't that I was goody two-shoes, that wasn't it. But I didn't even know they were doing this. I had not been invited into their little inner circle. But they got busted, but the cops didn't put the things together that I was not doing the drugs, so they thought I must have been. They're following me all over town, waiting for me to do something out of line. I could not undergo that level of police scrutiny and remain at liberty. So I went and saw my local Navy recruiter. The Vietnam War was in full cry right at that time, and it was in Texas. I went to see the local Navy recruiter and said, "How fast can you get me out of town?" He said, "Well, how about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning?" And I said, "Sold." And that began my Navy career. So I went to boot camp in San Diego, and what an experience that is. I mean, I remember the first day, it was summed up in the statement of our company commander when he looked at us and he's screaming at us out on the parade field. We thought we were being patriotic and honorable. He's yelling at us like we're in trouble. And he's saying to us, "Your mama's had you for 17 or 18 years. I've got you just for this few weeks, and I got to wreck everything they did and turn you into men. God help me." And that, I never forgot that little speech. And that's what he attempted to do, and he kind of did it. So I did for almost 5 years, a little over 5 years actually, in the American Navy during the Vietnam War. I was a hospital corpsman. I was a medic. The Navy supplies all the medical personnel for the Marine Corps. And every time a Marine patrol would go out into combat, a Navy hospital corpsman was along as a first aid guy to patch them up if they got hit. As a result, we had very high casualty rates among corpsmen. When I trained in San Diego to be a hospital corpsman, there were 68 of us that were together in the class in the company that I was going through. When the war was finished, there were 13 of us still alive. Incredible casualty figures. And I did my time not in Vietnam. I don't want to give that impression. I managed to dodge it. Had orders to go twice. Once they sent another guy instead of me. He was killed on his first patrol. A second time they sent another guy instead of me. He got blown up by a rocket after he'd been there just about a week, and he caught a piece of shrapnel in his neck, and it severed his laryngeal nerve. He's never spoken from that day to this. At the time, I was not serving God. I was an absolute lost, reprobate, gutter-rolling sinner. I mean, going after sin as fast as I could, yet God had his hand on me. I saw it clearly. I could tell it. I knew it. And this other guy's getting blown up. People are being destroyed around me. I'm doing the same things, and I'm in a bubble zone being protected. After I got out of the Navy, I was on my way back home to Texas. I was going through Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, and they had anti-war protesters out in the airport that day. They were attacking the individual servicemen, the sailors, the Marines, the airmen, whatever. And they caught up with me, and they were swearing at me and cursing me, spitting at me, throwing garbage at me, calling me a baby killer because I'd been in the military during the Vietnam thing. And I thought, if that's how my country's going to treat me after I put my life on the line, I am out of here. I reacted. I bought a one-way airplane ticket to Australia and immigrated to Australia. I got down there, and it was God's plan, absolutely. I got there my second day there. I was at a party in a boarding house where I was living, and I bumped into this drop-dead gorgeous redhead. I mean, it was like, wow, look at that. And turned out she was from New Zealand, and she'd only been in Australia for a week. I'd only been there 2 days, and I had stopped off in New Zealand on my way to Australia and fell in love with the place. Well, we started connecting, we started dating, and I didn't know that she was a Christian running from God. Her parents were full-time child evangelists back in New Zealand. I had a little search going on at the time trying to find God. I didn't know where he was. I have a sister who's deeply involved in the occult. She's actually an ordained Wiccan priestess. And we're on kind of different sides of the fence there. But she was getting me involved in all of this, and it started a search for God. I'm trying to find him. I don't know where he is. Marilyn, now my wife, she knows where he is and doesn't want to go there. So each one of us had the piece of the puzzle the other one needed. God put us together, and we happened.
And I had the privilege of meeting her.
You
Lovely
did.
lady.
She is
Yes.
indeed. Cute accent. You know.
Very.
Yeah.
Now, you ended up in various places that our viewers will be very familiar with in the news. The battle that went on between the Tutus and the Hutus and the Tutsis, and also Katrina. You've been on the ground there.
Right.
And the tsunami that went through Indonesia. And I'd like you to describe some of those, because we live in an era in the Western world mostly where we have not been familiarized, nor do we identify with people across the globe and the human suffering that we see. Yet we've opened the doors to immigration.
Right.
We see what's happening in Europe now. We're getting our fair share of tribulation now, and we need to understand others.
And it is a whole new world out there.
Yes,
that
it
many
is.
people are unfamiliar with. Well, I was headed for medical school. Instead, I ended up in a Bible college, because the only thing that mattered to me once I found Christ, or found Yeshua, was following him and knowing his plan and purpose and going with him. So Marilyn and I got married. We went to Bible college, and out of Bible school, they sent us to Papua New Guinea. We were in Papua New Guinea for 2.5 years. Later on, through a variety of circumstances, having lived for a while in New Zealand, then back into the States, then we were sent by the church we were part of to Southeast Asia. We were missionaries for several years in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So we have that sort of under our belt. And it's just simply the way that life has unfolded. I found myself at the site of a number of catastrophes. We haven't sought that, it's just happened. We were in Uganda at the tail end of some civil war things going on, and we saw some violence there. I did. I was awakened by an AK-47 opening up right outside my bedroom window my very first night in Uganda. And the gun was so close that the muzzle flashes were lighting up my room. But it was just typical violence happening in the street on the tail end of some civil unrest. These sort of things would happen. Later on, because of involvement with Uganda, the church I was pastoring had a strong missionary activity going on in Uganda. And in that, we bumped up against a crisis. It was the AIDS crisis. And I was over there seeing all of this. Well, we had a whole load of AIDS orphans dumped on us that no one was taking care of. So we cobbled together a system that has turned out to be the first, and I think today remains the largest, AIDS orphanage in all of East Africa, in the Rakai district of Uganda. We were looking after all these kids whose parents had died, and at that time, concurrent with that, the Rwanda genocide civil war broke out. And the Tutsis and the Hutus were going at it, and I think, some people might dispute the figures on this, but I personally think it was at least 1 million people were killed out of a population base of 8 million. 1 million got killed, and when the war was over, 2 million ran away. This is a devastated country. But when it was happening, they were killing all these people, and what are they going to do? That's a huge logistic problem to have that many bodies to dispose of.
Yes.
They were throwing them into the river, they were washing away, problem solved? Not really. They floated into Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is a tidal lake, and the tides were bringing the bodies ashore at a place called the Kesinsero Fish Landing in southern Uganda. We were the closest relief and development agency with our children's center to this disaster. And we got involved in that, and what we were doing before anyone else was doing it, we started burying bodies. We had grave details going. And every day we had teams of people going down burying. We ended up burying, I think the numbers around 26,000 people, trying to keep some kind of a record of who they were, a man or a woman or a child, and what kind of wound seemed to have killed them, or whatever. Were they shot? Were they hit with a hammer? What happened to them? It was a gruesome thing. But every afternoon we sent a Ugandan pastor down there to do a funeral service over the great mass grave over the new bodies that had just been installed. When the war was over and the new government in Rwanda was taking things over to try to sort out what had happened to them and record their history, all these stories and anecdotes are coming up of the things that had happened during the war. And the thing came up about these people that were burying their people with dignity, honor, and respect, which we were seriously attempting to do. They said, well, who are they? I said, well, they're Canadians. I says, Canadians? What do they do? Well, they do orphans. I say, orphans? We got orphans, invite them in. So we got invited to go in when many other agencies were trying to get in to establish things that were being repulsed. We got invited in and given responsibility for 2,000 orphans that had come out of the genocide that had happened there. And we did. We built it. It's going. It's doing a great job of educating the kids and taking care of them. So, yeah, we saw that that disaster very close and personal.
And the other two disasters with the tsunami in Indonesia,
Right.
as well as Katrina.
Right.
How is God found in these kinds of catastrophes? I mean, people look at that carnage and think, where is God? What did that do to you, your faith, and where was the presence that you may have witnessed?
From my faith,
through
it
this darkness?
strengthens it greatly, because I see the hand of God being extended and moving in so many circumstances and situations. But in those kind of disasters, people turn to their basic fundamental foundation. Who is God as they know him to be? And many of them are finding when they get there, he's not there. You know, what they're looking to is an empty cupboard.
Well, it reminds you of seek the Lord while he may be found.
Exactly. Or they're looking for God where he is not. They're not looking to him through the one who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. Jesus said that. Yeshua said that in John 14:6. And if they're not looking for him through that, they're not finding the God that we know. So they're left empty and broken and hopeless, and we're able to go in with a message of hope and a message of recovery, and people gravitate to that. People who've been devastated flock to that for the comfort and the solace that they find in Yeshua at a time such as that.
Pastor Culley, given everything you've said, now we're going to transition a bit to Israel. This is the one democratic nation that understands what carnage is, what catastrophe is.
Absolutely.
Being built upon survivors of the Holocaust, for one thing, let alone being attacked by Hamas and Islamic Jihad on a regular basis, and also understanding what it is to be part of the world. And they welcome the people coming in through Aliyah,
Right.
from the four corners of the earth.
Because they come from all over the world.
Exactly. Now, you have seen the world in its various forms and the various peoples, and that you could understand that very presence of Israel and the taste of what they have had in terms of the world and catastrophe and so forth.
Right.
Now, this leads us onto the future, the present, but also in terms of prophecy and where your role might fit in, because I know that you have this understanding of the Jew and the Gentile and how that works. So you're looking at the Gentile globally,
Right.
but you're looking at the Jew, and you speak about Scripture in that context, and that's what I'd like to hear about now.
Sure. I've got a relationship into the Middle East that I don't know if I shared with you, but first of all, I've made 5 trips to Israel. I've led tours over there, church people. Love it. Absolutely love Israel. But my oldest son, I have 2 sons, my oldest son married a beautiful young woman from Beirut, Lebanon. And so they actually lived for 5 years in Beirut. My grandchildren were growing up speaking Arabic and English and French, because all of those are common over there. Now they live in San Diego and they're picking up Spanish. But we've been many times over there, been immersed into things of the Middle East at a level beyond what most tourists and people like that would see. We've seen it where it really is, where the rubber meets the road, as it were. And I look around at Israel as the bastion of freedom and of liberty, especially for the people that have come, that was established initially for the people coming out of the Holocaust. And I think it's a wonderful thing that the United Nations and the people of the world did, but now they're retracting on a lot of that. They're attacking, it's going back. And it breaks my heart. The Jews need a safe place to go. And here's the deal. God made the world, all of it. Every piece of world that you see, he made it. It's his, by right of manufacture, if you will, to do with it what he will. And he has chosen to give that particular piece of real estate to people of Jewish origin. He gave it to Abraham and to his descendants. And there are scriptures throughout the Bible that say that that's a forever promise. Now, I was raised on Bible schools that were saying basically that Israel had forfeited their promises because they had rejected Yeshua. They rejected Jesus on the first time around. Therefore, all the promises fell in on us. We were the church. They all belonged to us. Nothing was left for Israel. And I basically, I was a good student. They taught me that. I learned it.
So you're getting into the notion here of replacement theology.
Exactly. I was steeped in that. And I didn't totally buy it. I still felt there were some holes in it. But later, I started looking at the Word. And the Bible talked about the Jews coming back into, the Israelites coming back into Israel. And I had always seen that as Ezra and Nehemiah, where they were coming back out of the Babylonian captivity, and I thought, all of that's been fulfilled. It's all been done. But I looked at it again. Christine, it says Judah and Israel were coming back. Well, the only ones that went into the Babylonian captivity were Judah. Israel had gone into an Assyrian captivity, and they're still in the wind. Where are they? Who are they? Where do they fit in? There's discussion and dispute over that. And so only one nation, the Judah, came back into Israel. And it came out of one country, Babylon. And it said, I'm going to draw you back from the nations where you have gone. Nations plural. And it put my head spinning. I thought, wait a minute, let's look at this again. And I saw that what's happening is the most important, dramatic scriptures of the prophecies that are being fulfilled in the world today are being filled right now. And it is the Jews making Aliyah, coming back to Israel. And I began to see that as a huge thing. Now, the Jews and the Gentiles have always they've been clashing for a long, long time. But when I read in Ephesians 2:14, it says he's going to break down the middle wall of partition and make of the two one new man. I used to puzzle over that scripture. Two what? What's he talking about? I got deeper into it and found out it's talking about the Jewish wing of the church and the Gentile wing of the church, of the gathering of the people together. I'm a small plane pilot. I learned how to fly. I can drive little airplanes. It's a lot of fun. But airplanes need two wings to fly. All right? If they lose one wing, they're going down. It's not going to happen. Well, I see very much that in the body of Messiah, where he is having two wings of it, the Jews and the Gentiles. Back in the first century, when Paul was carrying the word and he went to Galatia and they had the Galatian church fired up, there were Judaizers, they were called in the theology books, well-meaning, but in this case maybe more mean than well, Jewish people coming out of Jerusalem going in to Judaize the Gentile believers in Galatia. The book of Galatians is written to refute that. Acts chapter 15 in the council in Jerusalem, that's written to refute that. Well, what's happening now since Constantine and those things that happened in the 300s, is that now we've got Gentiles going to Jewish believers and trying to Gentilize the Jews. The Jews tried to Judaize the Gentiles.
There's an identity crisis going on.
Exactly.
Because, yes, in the first place.
And so
we've tried to Anglicize Yeshua.
Exactly. And
then you have a group of people now who are trying to become Jewish.
Exactly.
And they're grafted in, yes. And
exactly. But the Bible clearly says in other contexts,
there are two identities.
The truth is there. If you are who you are when you're called, stay that way. And it's talking about slave or free or this or that. The concept is who you are is who you are. Stay with the program. You know, just have Yeshua in there.
But understand the program.
Understand it, have Yeshua there. So I see the hope of the body of Yeshua of having one new man churches where Jew and Gentile are both totally accepted. They each keep their own personal identity, respect each other's identity, not try to change each other. But how about a place where they could celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas? What about a place where they could do Easter and Passover? You know, and everybody's happy with it and everyone is receiving from it because all of it is a further extension and revelation of who Yeshua truly is. And without one part of it, he's incomplete. And we need them all. And we can become one in Yeshua.
Pastor Culley, I found it very inspirational what Netanyahu once said, that there would not have been the state of Israel had it not been for the work of Christian Zionists.
Right.
And to this day, he still respects that. He sends a message when the ICJ does the Feast of Tabernacles, Rivlin attends, and there's that general respect for Christian Zionists that
right.
you do see, even recognized by the
right.
state of Israel in terms of even a museum that recognizes Christian Zionists. And there we see the two side by side in harmony.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. It's got to extend further into the culture. And we need to put forward a message to our Jewish brethren who have not clicked in on this yet, that yes. we are harmless. We are not there to hurt them. We're there to help them. We're there to bless them. We're there to stand with them. If they need help and support, we want to be there. You and I both visited Yad Vashem.
Yes, that was my first trip actually to Israel.
Oh my!
A Yad Vashem delegation.
Well, every trip I've made to Israel, I include that in the trip. If they don't have it booked into the tour guide, I make sure that that's there and put a long time into it. And it's overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming. But one of the things that gets me so much about Yad Vashem is the grove of trees outside. all of the trees that got planted, and at the base of the trees, there are little plaques with names on it. Who are these people? Who were the names? They're names of Gentiles. They were called the righteous among the nations. They were the Gentiles who stood with the Jewish people being persecuted in the Holocaust, many of them laying down their lives, paying the ultimate price to protect them, to preserve them, to save them. And they're being honored by having a plaque at the base of these trees. One of the deepest cries of my heart is, if the world ever goes to mush like that again and falls apart that way, I hope that God would give me the grace and the courage to do whatever it takes, that when the dust settles, that somehow Ernie Culley would raise a tree at a place called Yad Vashem.
Wow. What a place to end this interview on. It's been an honor. And for a fellow that went to boot camp, you're now doing it as a Christian.
It was good training.
I want to thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Christian.
sharing the story with us and the inspiration.
Thank you for
Bless
the opportunity. Shalom.
Please share this video, and on YouTube, click the button below to become a subscriber.